Hello and welcome to part two of this exclusive first for GrassChat, doing a two-part GrassChat video. I hope you watched the first one. There was lots of great comments and likes from it, so that is very appreciative. But I'm delighted to welcome back for the second instalment of his Autograss life story, the one and only Mr. Chris Allanson. Chris, hello. How you doing, mate?
Hello, very good, thank you.
Good. Good. Yeah, part one was quite an adventure, wasn't it, really? Going through your early days, sort of trying to create two lives for yourself. One very serious, being the man upholding the law as a police officer, and then trying to relax a bit on your weekends, and started off with a brief bagger racing career, and then you found this world of autograss, and it's never stopped from there, really, has it? So just before we get into the next part, did you have time to recollect anything we spoke over before and think back on it? Or is there anything else you'd like to add, which any stories from which we may have missed, which you can fit in now?
No, I don't think so. I think we did give it a good going over. I might remember something as we start talking later on, so let's see where we end up. If we bounce backwards a few years, it'll only be because I've remembered something then, so no problem.
It may well have. It could be something which has led to that moment in the future, which is now the past, of course, but something which may have happened many years ago may have actually come back in aid of something a bit more recently. So we sort of covered you from your early days, discovering the sport, trying to make a name for yourself in Class 10 against the established names at the time. Obviously, really upsetting the apple cart on one or two occasions with how well you did, and getting close to those major victories and that. And then it sort of all changed when you went Class 8, and from that moment, beginning 1993, it sort of, that was the platform for where Z cars came from, with your Class 8s, and obviously it grew to this magnificent venture, building cars for every level of driver out there, and then going further forward, changing the sport, changing how the classes go in the specials and the sevens, and helping the evolution from it. So definitely a career up to this point we've got to be proud of, really, with what you have achieved both on and off the track.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got to be sort of mindful of what you've done over your life. If you look back and think you've missed opportunities, I don't like that. I like to think that if something comes along and I think it'll do good, whether it's in business or whatever, grab it and have a go at it. I'm not one for sitting on the fence. I'll always have an opinion about something, and I'll probably tell you about it. So won't be tired talking to me in the beer tent some nights, but it's done me well really over the years. So and the first part of it that we did, some of it was quite a long while ago. It's 42 years since I started. So crikey, I'm racing the grandkids of the people I used to race. So, yeah.
But your love for the sport is obviously what's keeping you going, and it's why you continue to get yourself involved. I mean, like I say, you've even without really trying, you helped evolutionize certain aspects of it and help things progress, and that continues in the next part, which we're going to talk about, because there are several occasions where you did think, and you still continue to do, you sort of think outside of the box, which is now wrapped in cotton wool, because those are the rules, but you sort of still have that imagination and creativity to look beyond that, and if something can be effective, you'll try it, and if it doesn't, you don't dwell on things too much. That's something else which I realised after speaking before. If something doesn't work or doesn't go your way, yes, you'll make your point at that time, but once it's in the past, it's done and you move on. So that's sort of a respectful thing to say to you about that. And like I say, lots more to talk about here. So We got to the end of 2002, sort of, and we're going to kick off with the beginning of 2003, and this is the very beginning of it, really, because you made yet another change for yourself. You disbanded from Specials Racing, and you made the focus on Class 7. Now, minis had obviously been used in the past, back in the early 80s, late 70s even, minis were used. But you took up on this approach where by the early years of the millennium, the bike engines were really taking over in Class 7. And you effectively built a Class 8 with a body shell, with the single Hayabusa Mini. You unveiled it at the Autosport show. That was where it was made public. And I'm not sure if at the time, I don't think on the show it had any numbers on the car or anything. So it didn't actually look out and out like it was an autograss car. I'm not sure if you was in two minds of what you was doing with it at that point. But I do remember one comment, which hopefully is correct, that you made about the car. And your focus was, if you took it Class 7 racing, was it was a big booster. But you said, I won't win out the gate, but the car should outhandle anything out there, and that is where I'll go. So was it really making a Class 8 with a body shell? Was that where you was going with it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was. I actually built it to start with the ZX10 engine, 12 engine in, just one standard engine, just basically just chucked in the back, and I knew all along that the car would brake better than anything else, and it would hang tighter to the corners. So you would suffer perhaps when it was grippy. So early in a meeting, you'd struggle. As soon as it got polished, it would come back to you. And that was sort of proved at the York, North of England that year. Yeah. In the heat, I sort of poddled about and I got through to the final. And I was in grid 1, I think, in the final. And because you pulled out the bag in them days, I know we sometimes qualify now and you pick your grid, but in them days you actually sort of got what you were given. Grid 1, off we went, and I was dead last to the first corner. And I just stomped on the brakes, and I came out second behind Carl. Carl then, I think, had a Chinky Centro with a couple of Blackbirds in. And he was doing the Carl thing. He was sideways, there was smoke coming off the tyres because it was slippery. And I tucked in under him on the second bend, and then I just potted. And I literally, it was chugga, chugga, chugga around the corners and just as fast as you could in a straight line. And by the time we finished, I was half a lap in front of him. And it proved the point. You know, the point was, and we battled like hell that year, me and Carl. We were nip and tuck for the Bass. And it was the first year that Jade actually raced a car. Or fully raced the car. She raced the special, I think, the year before, but she basically had a full season in the 7, and it was that nimble. You could steer it, point it where you wanted it. It was just awesome. And obviously, everybody else had loads more power, and they were a lot heavier. So what happens then is they've got like the sort of weight trying to push them wide on a corner. And they were probably a lot heavier than they are now, and they probably weren't as developed. You know, the truth is that the 7s then aren't what the 7s were now. So in that snapshot in time, that was a move that you could pull, and it would last maybe a year or two, and then things developed on again, and obviously that opportunity had gone. So a bit like with the Class 8, it was a car of its time. The 7 pretty much was a car of its time. And we ended up, we were at the Map Open, and well, it wasn't the Map Open, but it was the Map track for the last Bass round. Yeah. Me and Carl went into it neck and neck. I can't remember what the points were, but it was bloody close. And we never met in the heats. Or did we meet in the heat? No, we met in one of the heats. And Carl just had a spin down the main straight of his own accord. I don't know what he was doing, but he ended up being even closer. We were like, literally, and I'm sat looking at the points. I had my shoes and socks off as I'm driving around, thinking, where the hell do I need to be final? And I worked out that I needed to be just behind Carl. It didn't matter where I finished, as long as I was on his tail. And I ended up coming third, and he was second, and I can't remember who won. And so I snuck the Bass by minimum points. I couldn't even tell you what the points were. Nothing in it.
It was 3 points. I did actually find the magazine the other day, and it was 3 points. That's what was in.
Yeah,
that's how close.
Yeah, I know it was. And my heart was beating because I'm thinking, am I doing the right thing? Do I have to pass him? And a time or two, I could have had a nibble at him, and I thought, if I tangle, I'm buggered. You know, so you play the careful card. And Carl, like, I mean, God bless him. He's absolutely spectacular. You know, he's a fantastic driver and always has been. And we had a really, really tight season. You know, it was nip and tuck who was going to win it, and I was just lucky enough to do it on the day. But it was certainly a polished car track car, and that was sort of right from day one when I built it. I knew I'd struggle early in a meeting when it was grippy, but obviously when it came to it, and I remember people coming up to me and saying, "Will it work then?" You know, and in NEC, loads of people said, "Will it work?" Then I said, "Oh yeah, it'll work. It'll be right. It'll work." And they were all going away thinking it won't work, and yet it did. You know, to be fair, it was right. It did what I thought it would do. So, and then that obviously some people still have big single bike engine. I mean, but they're up to 1700 cc buses now. But you can't compete with the modern John Gay cars and the sort of twin Hayabussas and things, and the V8 sort of radicals. They've got some serious power. So you wouldn't have done that, you know. But hey, look, you pick the time and you pick the car, don't you? So,
well, you seem to have a bit of a knack for that. Obviously, like you found that window. I mean, with Class A, if you'd have built that a year later, it might not have worked so effectively. And the same with the 7, as you rightly pointed. If you'd have built that for 2004, it might not have worked, because things around that period for Class 7 terms, things like progressed in leaps and bounds in a short time. I mean, you take from the year 2003, where you and Carl had you and Carl really had the smallest cars. I remember when Carl brought the Fiat out, it was a tiny car compared to everything else that was out there. But in the matter of 2 years, everybody almost was having small cars. But going back to that last year, it must have been a fantastic game of cat and mouse, because, as you say, first heat of every Baz round, you would probably finish 3rd or 4th, and then you'd maybe get a second in heat 2. Well, you'd maybe have a first or a second in heat 2, because the track, if it was a polished track, it would polish. But then for the 3rd heat, you was almost back to square one, because the work would be done overnight and the grip would come back in, and you'd maybe lose out a little bit, and then the final was like heat 2. So it must have been a great buzz being in a battle like that. I mean, especially when you come from the times before where the Baz wasn't such a thing, and you was racing just at regular open meetings for fun. But when there's something on the line now, such as a British Autograph title, it must have been quite a special thing when you achieved that at the end of the year, especially with how close it was.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I mean, when you look at Carl, he's sort of got hero worship status because of his driving style, and he is fast. There's no question about that. So to battle with him all year, it wasn't like a Nationals where it's one race and there's a bit of luck and, you know, things can change on the drop of a hat. That was like a protracted battle throughout the year. And it was a good battle, you know, it was a good clean fight. You know, we raced week in, week out, and yeah, I was happy to sort of take the title. And it, you know, that ranks as a pretty good title because you had to battle for so long for it. So there is a place for the sort of longer championships, as there is a place for the Nationals, really, for that one race. So yeah. But I thoroughly enjoyed the season. Yeah.
I mean, it was a mostly high year. We don't actually have to talk about the other bit, which is well known with what went on. Unless you are happy to say a word, but it's not for me. I was going to actually bring on about Jade's racing, because, as you say, I mean, you built this car with a plan. The plan might not necessarily have been how it would have worked with somebody else behind the wheel. But Jade, when we spoke to her on her chat, she didn't have the strongest of debuts when she had to go in the Class 8, but it sort of set her off and she wanted to do more. And in the end, she jumped in this car. And no disrespect to her, but for somebody who was practically a complete novice to jump in a Class 7 and actually be successful in a first year, it can't be far wrong, can it? I mean, but just before we go back forward, just go on then. What you've got?
Well, obviously Jade couldn't even drive on the road. She'd never driven. So to put her in a class, and there's some good girls in Class 7. There's good girls all the time in Class 7, really, because I think that they get the buzz for it. And she raced regular with Charlotte Pugh, and they had I think they had a twin-engine Fiat Punto that had built Dennis. In fact, Dennis, the eternal car salesman, says you can get two big blokes in front of a Punto. That's how you sell them. And he would sit in his car and say that. He said it to me at Nottingham once when I jumped in passenger side and was sat talking to him while he was queued up, waiting to go racing. He said, you can sell these two big blocks and get in front of a Punto. And he was right, you can. This would be a bit front. But she got in it. And I think because there was somebody work around her, that helped with her confidence. And she had an early success, I think, at the North of England. I think we both won that weekend. And that set her up. That, suddenly she knew she could do it. Once she got her head in it, I mean, she's a hell of a driver again, when she's on it. Did she tell you about us going to Norway? Did she cover that in hers? I can't remember.
I can't remember. I think there was a mention, but I can't fully remember.
We went to Norway in 2017, the December of 2017. And I took my Class 7, the Nissan Micra with a Chevy in, that I built, the first one on trailing arms. And I took it to Norway, to John Ogland's ice racing school. I put plastic windows in. I have the radiator in the back anyway. And I made a scoop, so it scooped cold air from underneath. Air from the radiator was coming into the cab. And then it had perspex side screens and a back screen, so it was all sealed up. And then the hot air from the bloody radiator was enough to keep you warm inside. So we went over there. It was minus 25, freezing, absolutely. And this ice lake's like a foot deep in ice. Put your studded tyres on and away we went. So we've got this 500 horsepower front engine rear wheel drive car on an oval that John Ogland set up for us. John Ogland used to rally for Skoda, and he's 70 odd now, but he still drives, he still teaches people. He's had Lewis Hamilton and all sorts of them there. He had Senna there when he was teaching him how to lead foot brake, and loads of people, Johnny Milner, loads of people have been, and quite a few grassing lads have been over the years. What a gent. So he sets us an oval up, and we went round, and we were going round. You time each other, don't you? It's a race, so you time each other. So I said to him, you have a go in it, John, and see what you think. And he had a few laps, and he came back and he said, Jesus, that's a weapon. He said, the steering's so good, because it's so quick, it's the steering, but you can catch it. Power steering, it was warm inside, you've only got two gears because it's a two-speed auto. Just set off and go. Whatever revs you're at, it'll pull and turn and drift, So he went round and he did 29 seconds round this lap. Yeah. So I was doing it 28 and a half. Jade did them in 28. She was a second faster than the pair of us. And that's, it just doesn't lie. The stopwatch doesn't lie. Smoother, cleaner, not leery. And I mean, I don't consider myself to be a leery sort of driver. I'm always sort of feeling for grip, but I couldn't go no faster than that, and neither could he. So it sort of shows that there is that basic talent there, and she was nurtured in it and loved the car. So yeah, probably a big part of her racing career was having a good start in a year. A year's good racing, it just sets you up, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does, and she proved quite successful. I mean, she won almost everything apart from the nationals that year. I think she got third. So there aren't many full debut seasons like it is. But just before we go back forward. We're actually going to go backwards because I don't know how it's come about, but you've not only helped customers out by building cars, but you've helped a certain number of drivers out as well. And Jade actually mentioned, obviously, through the years, your Class 8 years, and especially very, very talented lady drivers in your cars.
Yeah.
And they were all very successful. I mean, the three which obviously stick out is Jackie Sunley, Kay Quinn, and Kate Featherston. Three incredible talents, and their success was also down to the machines that you had built and provided for them. And each one of them had a different car to race. So, with some sort of aspect behind this by being able to help showcase talents of others by putting them in the cars.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, because obviously it was a business by then, so you need to promote the cars yourself, but also it's very good if you've got a lady driver. And I have a bit of a sort of thing. A few years ago, maybe not so much now, but I always said people have got 10 grand for their hobby. And by that, what I mean is people will have a £10,000 caravan, or they'll have a new car every couple of years, or they'll go on holiday, and 10 grand is like a figure that you can run. Well, in them days, it was probably 5 or 6 grand, but the principle's the same. If you've got a wife who's racing and she races a car that the brakes are crap on, or the steering's heavy, or it doesn't turn in when they want it, they don't want to know. But the thing with the little Class 8s was, and probably it was a bit of luck that we started building 8s, they just went where you wanted them to. So when you have a husband and wife team, you put the wife in the car and she's instantly on the pace. So what I ended up doing, I mean, Jackie Sunley used to race her dad's Class 10, which was a monster. It was a typical Class 10 of the era. And the girl, he never had the brakes, or this wasn't right, or that wasn't right. She jumped in that and she took instruction. And another thing that you find is people will listen to somebody else apart from their parents. If your dad says, doing that wrong, you go, well, no, you don't know what you're talking about, you silly old sod. But actually, they'll listen to somebody else. So I found it very easy. And I'd say to Jackie Sunley, you need to do this, you need to do that. Watch the water bowsers dump water here, or whatever, just give them that instruction and they would listen. And so then it becomes very easy to build them up to a speed fairly quickly and off they go. They've obviously still got to have that basic talent. And when we got on with Kay Whitehouse, as she was then, Kay Quinn now, I mean, she had some talent and she weighed 3 stone 6. She was tiny. So in that class, the girl could pedal it and she was light. And she didn't take much instructing. I mean, she just sort of knew. Her dad obviously had taught her quite a lot. John's like a good driver and been around for a long while, been motocrossing, done stuff. So there was the basics there fairly easily to go, but she had quite a bit of success. She did very well in the Vauxhall powered one when we went back to a car engine from a bike engine, just to prove that a car engine can do it. So she went well with that. And then I took on with Kate Featherston, who has massive competitive streak in her. She was that determined. She put herself through university. She's a lass that's got a lot about her in other ways as well. But when she's behind the wheel of the car, like proper talented. I mean, in fairness, some of the lady drivers that we've got now and then are good enough to race in, circuit cars, rally cars, what have you. There's no difference between a bloke and a woman behind a wheel, as far as I'm concerned. I was watching something on Michelle Mouton the other day, a clip about her. You remember her in an Audi Quattro. Jesus Christ! I mean, a slip of a lass racing that down forest stages. They've got it. So there's no difference for me between a man and a woman racing. In fact, I'd probably say that the ladies can be better than the men because they're not quite as aggressive. So some of the time, they don't make the mistakes that the men make by trying too hard. That's maybe controversial, but, that's what I'm sort of, what I sort of think. And it was quite satisfying having these young lasses come along and help them for a few years in their career. And then obviously when Jade came, well, she was going to get first dibs, wasn't she? You know, the daughter sort of out trumps everybody else. And she didn't let me down. You know, to be fair. She's won plenty of titles and had some different cars. You know, they've not all been easy to race. Some of them have been developed, you know, over a period of a season, and you know, she'll get out of them and say, "That's shite, Dad." And I'll say, "Well, it isn't actually, but I can make it better." You know, just you just got to have faith in your dad. I'll get there in the end. So yeah.
Well, no. I mean, it's great that you obviously put yourself out there to help others as well and showcase some talents that they've got. And yeah, you can't. I mean, you do watch some of the ladies racing there. It's absolutely fantastic. There's been some memorable ladies racing out there, and again, it's just a shame that when it comes to their big championships, they haven't always got the capacity crowd there to support them. But yeah, I mean, you do get some ladies where they'll turn up to a meeting and there isn't no ladies, and they'll get, rightly or wrongly, they get the permission to have a race against the men, and they actually beat them, and it shows how good they really are. No disrespect to ladies racing at all, because as I say, it is fantastic to watch. There's some very, very talented women within the sport, and there'll be more joining them when they get to race themselves. But stepping away from ladies for a minute, because we're going to progress through the next year. I mean, you only did one season in Class 7, I think, at that time. You sort of, I think things were starting to progress a bit further on with the circuit side and your track day cars and stuff like that, and the business as a whole. But you then took on a new focus, and this is something that you didn't mention in your notes, but it completely revolutionised the up-and-comers of the sport, because you built the first junior special. I think you built it in 2004. So 17 years ago now, you put this car together. It was for me, because I didn't follow so much, and still the social conversations online, and that wasn't quite so big then. But to me, it came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it to happen. But for 2004, you built the junior special. It looked very much like a Class 8 chassis, very similar to the ones you were building at the time. How did this come about, and how was you able to get granted the go-ahead to actually create this? Because obviously, for many years, if you was a junior, you had to race a Class 1 car. It was the least powerful car that you could race. It was the basic car, but then to create something completely new and a whole different perspective of what a young driver can do in their early career. So yeah, how did this all come about?
Well, they rang me from NASA, and they said, "Would you build a junior special?" And I said, "Yeah, I would," because I'm a big specials man, obviously. And so they said, "You'll have to do it at your own expense, and we won't guarantee you that it will actually be a race class at the end of the year." I said, "Well, that's fine. I'll take that chance." So I took a standard Class 8 tub, and I went to the scrapyard, my local scrapyard, where I got the two Triumph rear arms from, you know, my local bloke who I knew. And I walked in, and there was a Ford Fiesta, and there was a Nova. And going back to the old Lancia days, what I thought was, if I make this really simple, anybody can make this by getting an old car and chop the back off it. And literally, if you take the subframe, the struts, the arms, the brake discs, the drive shafts, the whole shooting match out of the car, you'll be able to just cobble it into the back of a frame, and you'd probably be able to do it yourself, and it would still be the same as everybody else's. So I looked at these two cars, this Corsa and the Fiesta, and I said to the bloke, "How much is the Fiesta?" He said, £600. I said, "How much is the Corsa?" He said, £200. I said, "I'll have the Corsa," because I was I had no money. So I got this £200 Corsa, chopped everything out of it, cobbled this thing together, tarted it up, and took it to a race meeting to promote it. And I got slated. I got hammered. Loads of people with minis were happy.
Oh,
yeah, because they thought that it was wrong. They didn't want their kids in specials. And I mean, obviously, they'd invested in a Mini. You know, they'd put time and money into a Mini. So there was a lot of flack. But as soon as I'd built one, Jeff Berris had built one, and that split the flack a little bit because he built one the same. Basically, he said, look, I'll just do the same as you because we don't want to be battling each other with this. It's ridiculous, you know. So he built one with a Corsa. And, I mean, it's grown and grown and grown. I don't know how many junior specials there are out there, but there's a lot. And they've been very good in a lot of ways. I would like to massage the class a little bit now, because I feel, having run them for 17 years, people who've run them will understand that the struts are a pain in the backside. The bend at the slightest touch. You get through loads of struts. The uprights are rubbish. Didn't know that when I built it. You know, I had no clue. I didn't know what was going to break. We now know. For me, I would like to see the rules change slightly, keep the same wheelbase, put a pair of trailing arms on them and a cheap Protec or whatever shocker on the back. That would get away from having to put struts on the thing every meeting or 2 meetings, save you 80 quid a corner every time you do it, and you'd soon recoup your money for the cost of the rear trailing arms. Trailing arms are available in the field, you know, everybody's got rose joints, everybody's got the knowledge to work with them, and it would just be better. Not too bothered about changing the engine at this moment in time, because there is still plenty of engines about, but it's this running gear problem that we're getting to, and we're coming to a point where you won't be able to get them anymore. So we do need to look at it. I can't make a rule and do anything, but I think we now need to look as a sport at that going forward, because, you know, they're a cracking thing, and if you want to race a single seater, brilliant. You know, we've got 10-year-olds in the classes now, 12-year-olds up to 16. You know, I mean, I'll say something else controversial, but I'll say it, I might as well. I'd like to see F600s as an intermediate step for the juniors. The juniors is where the future of the sport is. If they race the same car, if you take the example of a 10-year-old actually getting into a junior special on day one, is 6 years in the same car, or her. Now, that's 6 years is a long time. But if you've got, say that they're going a micro or whatever, a Yaris or a Mini for a year or two, and then they're going a junior special for a couple of years, and then they could progress into an F600, you're building up the power and speed of the car. They're learning about front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, open wheel racing. You know, somebody comes to you at the NEC. If I'm stood at the NEC and somebody says to me, I want my kids to go racing, I would say, right, well, how old are your kids? Well, a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. Right, well, you can run in these cars. As they get older, the 12-year-old, when they get to 14, they can go into this 600 class. When they're 16, they can go into that twin-engined monster of a class 7. You know, is it actually right for us to put kids from 16 years of age into a class where there's 2 engines, you know, 500 horsepower, whatever, weighing half a ton? You know, it's a monster of a thing. And out there, I think it's too big a jump. I've always thought that. But there's never been a structure. And having raced an F600, they're quick enough to wake you up. Mum and dad could race the same car. This is where we're failing with the junior specials. There isn't actually a mum and dad's class from, whereas the minis, you might share it with your mum. So, you know, we've sort of got to, as a sport, we've got to look going forward. How do we increase our membership? How do we promote the sport better? Are we doing the right thing? We've been sat on the same rules and construction things pretty much all the time I've raced. Nothing much has changed. And we maybe need to take a long, hard look at ourselves and say, right, what can we do? And have a discussion. And it isn't a decision I can make. It isn't a decision the board can make. It is a decision for people in the field, for your actual members through the clubs, through the leagues, through the chairman. And if we get these sort of suggestions, we should discuss them in a grown-up manner and come back and say, yeah, we are going to try that. You know, and I could sell somebody at the NEC, never raced before, the fact that their kids can progress through and they've got a path for them to get up to the speed they need to be. And that's a sensible thing to do, I would have suggested. So, I don't know. I don't know what.
Yeah, I mean, with that progressive step as well, because you'd have one at 12, one at 10. When the 12-year-old gets to 14, he would end up getting in something else. But then when the 10-year-old gets to 12, he can then have that car passed down to them. So,
yeah,
2 cars aren't wasted then.
No.
You just one which you need to get rid of. But I think a partial reason why something wanted to change back in around 2003, 2004 was because I think at like the Nationals, there was around 160 juniors in the saloons. And I think they wanted to try and break that up a bit. Also, at that time, a lot of kids, when they were graduating from juniors to senior racing, a lot of them were jumping straight into 7s, 8s, things like that. So I suppose they wanted that rear drive experience for them before they went into something unbelievable. But you built this junior special because you had the apparatus to do it, but it was sort of by chance with what power plant was going to do. I mean, I don't know if that was what you envisioned at the time, a 1200, or whether it was going to be something else. And I think around this time, F600 was sort of kicking off as well, weren't it? And I think there was some talk about people wanting F600s to be used as junior specials. Because at the time there weren't many of them, and they weren't as, I know it's still a basic class, but they've managed to progress in some development as well, and they're now a lot quicker than they used to be when they started. So probably F600 as a very starting point, maybe not quite there, but and I think that, like I said, and you said, the junior specials class itself has blossomed immensely. It's actually more popular now than the saloons. I think there are more kids in it. But this one you built then, obviously you knew it was going to sort of work because it was a trusted chassis and things like that. But the learning curve, was you quite surprised, pleased with how well the car actually worked? Because I mean, you also then decided you needed to promote this car and get people talking about it and interested in it. So you sort of went every single weekend somewhere with it, and you invited juniors who were there at the time, as long as they had a license with them, they could do some laps in it. Was you pleased with how well they adapted to it?
Yeah, I mean, these juniors are just on it out there straight away, and they all jumped in it. I remember I actually commentated at Cumdu at a bass round. We put some kids in the interval in it, and I was on the commentary just talking about them, just promoting it really. And I can't remember who bloody rode round, but there were 2 young lads, or a lad and a lass, and they just went round straight away. So they weren't that hard to drive. They're probably quite hard to drive as fast as you can go, but you can get round. There's no welding diff or anything. So they were a simple concept, and it basically worked pretty well right from start. So I think it's done some good. There's still some of the original cars out there racing, 15 years later. So it can't be bad. The value of the cars sort of sticks sort of fairly constant. So you can, I think I'm right in saying that all the Lockwood kids from Scunthorpe went through one car. And I think, God, years you stayed out of it. But that must have been the most known about car. It kept all them years with 4 kids going through it, but and they all did well in it. It was a fast car, wasn't it? So good thing really. I think it's certainly appealing to a lot of the kids nowadays as well. Especially if they're a young one coming from like a karting background, it looks like a big go-kart, doesn't it? So that's appealing, and it's blossomed massively, and it's certainly a strong thing. But it's interesting to see that you would like to include F600 into it, and you never know. A few years down the line, it may work out. But obviously now the 10-year-olds are in. Really, something's got to happen in the next few years if it was going to happen, wasn't it? Rather than stretching out. But that's not down to us to try and work out now. It probably isn't fair on a 10-year-old racing a 16-year-old You know, there's some, a 10-year-old isn't going to hack it with a 16-year-old that's had 6 years experience in the same car. So that perhaps it might be a good thing to change, to have like 3 splits in it, or be able to stay in the same car if you want. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's a discussion point, isn't it? It's something, and I believe in listening to people and talking to people about what they think, because some people have some cracking ideas, you know, and we need to, you know, we need to try and progress the sport as much as we can and keep it going, or make it better, or build it back up again. After COVID, we look like we're going to lose a few, and it's going to be hard work for a year or two. So we need to be on the front foot, really. So,
yeah. Well, hopefully once we get back up and running, we sort of know where we are as a sport. We'll sort of know where each club is, and then we can sort of get an idea again of how the classes are progressing, and if anything needs to be done to help draw some interest into it. So that remains to be seen. But back to you now and your racing, because it seems a common theme here. Once again, you saw a new challenge for yourself, and this one also slightly common. It didn't sort of go well with everybody else, because eventually it got banned. We're on about your bike engine class 6. So
what can you do?
I mean, bike engines were allowed in class 6 for many years. What was his name? From St. Neots. He had one. Tony Aspinall, is it? He ran a bike. I think it was. For many years, national finalist in the 90s and stuff. But then he sort of disappeared, and there wasn't. And then you came along with one. Oh, we don't like that. And he only had 1 year with it. But, so what did you make of this one then? This little story then? How did bike engine fit into class 6 with you?
Well, just, you know, I might as well, mate. I mean, I've never had a go in a class 6. I've never driven front wheel drive.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's hard work. I mean, my natural instincts just automatically. I used to drive along and concentrate like hell on where I pointed the wheel and what I did with the throttle. It was hard work for me, was that. And I did eventually get the better of it. But I remember I built it. I couldn't start it. It wouldn't start. I was a day trying to start it, and it turned out I couldn't get it to fire fuel. I threw fuel down the throttle bodies, and anyway, I swapped the throttle bodies for another set, and it struck up, and the injectors had glued up. They'd been out of the bike for such a while. The varnish had vanished. All 4 injectors shut. Not even one of them was opening. So anyway, but I raced it and qualified. I was second at the Nationals that year at Stroud. We'd just moved here. We'd just moved to the farm. And I was stressed like hell with the move, because when I went down to the Nationals, the solicitors were supposed to have sorted out all the paperwork, and she was useless. I was ranting at her over the phone, basically, to get the bloody job done, because I didn't want to miss it. Anyway, we got to the Nationals. We had a good Nationals, and then came back. But yeah, it was all right. It was a decent little car, little chain and sprocket drive on it, dead cheap and cheerful. Had a 1400 Hayabusa in the front of that, so it was plenty powerful enough. Yeah. Biggest problem was getting out of the grid. On the track, it was okay, but just that first yard or two, anybody with a big Vauxhall with all the weight of the front wheels got a yard on you out of the grid. Yeah. So I had all sorts of bits of devices on it to try and make it come out of the grid. I had a hand clutch on it for a while, just to feel for it. Yeah. But, it was just, that was its biggest sort of downfall. But once you were rolling, it was nimble.
I was going to say, with it being small and light, and you know how light pressing a bike and bike clutch throttle and all that is, was there a lot of issue with like too much wheel spin out the gate? Is that another reason why the hand clutch and things like that? Because obviously it revs so much higher. I suppose, did you? I mean, I was going to say, did you feel a bit intimidated as well, because you was in quite a small car? I mean, those Astras are big when you're in a Mini.
Well, yeah, but the big and the leaf gaps, it's the same scenario, isn't it? You know, they're heavy. So, but I mean, the biggest problem was learning to drive a front wheel drive. Yeah. You know, when your natural instincts are to turn the wheel one way or the other, and my brain just automatically drives a rear wheel drive car. So to get into that, I had to concentrate all the time. It was non-stop concentration, which you know, all right, it's only for 2 minutes, but hell, your head was nearly pounding by the time it finished. But it was a good little car. You know, it did what it needed to do. Can't remember what I did with it in the finish. I had to chop it up, obviously, but I don't know what I did with it. Can't even remember.
I mean,
yeah, it was,
like I say, for something which was a completely new concept for you, not just the car, but obviously front wheel drive, as you say, and things like that. You had a good year, really, didn't you, once you got there? I mean, second at the Nationals is no disgrace with it, although second seems to be a common thing for yourself, unfortunately.
yeah.
Well, you won a Baz round with it as well, so that must have been pleasing. And
Yeah.
you must have been quite pleased by the end of the year. But would you have liked to have had another year in, just to see if you could have had more of a go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was stuff I could have done to it. There's things, you know, the difficulty, like I said, was launching it. It was the first 5 yards. After that, you were all right. And it's very difficult with a bike engine car to sort of feed the clutch in and stop the wheel spin, because if you back off, it'll bog at low revs. So you could stall it if you weren't careful. So you always had a bit too many revs on, and that introduced some wheel spin, which you didn't bloody want, you know. And, oh my goodness gracious! So yeah, it's but I would have developed that on. That would have been developed, definitely. There was things I wanted to do to it, but and knowing at the start of the year that you can't have 2 years in it to sort it is a bit of a downer, because it stops you sort of throwing a full 110% into it, you know. So yeah, probably on in reflection, if I thought I was having a second year, I probably ripped it to bits in the middle of the first year and altered a few bits. But hey, it's one of them. It worked. I enjoyed my racing, so main thing.
Well, that is the main thing, isn't it? And obviously, it must be a bit disappointed when you get told quite early on that, oh, you've only got one season with this, and am I going to be able to enjoy myself now? Because like you say, you're putting yourself back now from trying to work on it and make it better. And at the time, it's too expensive to cut up and start again, because you'll then miss out on the season. So it's a shame that it only lasted.
The Bandit.
Sorry?
The Bandit of the NEC. The Bandit of the NEC. So you can only race it this year next year. And that was it. You know, there was no ifs, buts and shudders. It was, you can only race it this year, Chris. That's it. So, and I never fought it, really, to be fair. It wasn't really as big a fight as what I wanted with the twins. But, you know, that's I just said, yeah, all right, that's fine. And cracked on with it. So.
Yeah, I think part of it was they didn't want more bike engine classes, wasn't it? So, I mean, obviously, bike engines were banned out of class 5 early on, then they banned the twins in 9s. And with 7, 8, and 10, now, especially at that time, it was bike engine dominated. That's how they wanted it to stay, I suppose. 3 bike engine classes, why spread it further? But again, you proved a little point that alternative can be successful. And we're going to stick with different stuff now. Not in class 6, really, but let's talk diesel. not everybody's favourite conversation. We're not here to talk about Greenpeace and polluting the world and all that, but we're going to talk about your life with diesel. I mean, to be honest, the diesel concept is probably the longest thing you've actually run up to for this, because you did almost change year on year with what you were trying to do, but you stuck with a diesel, whether it was maybe not the same exact motor, but you ran diesels for a number of years in class 7 and 10, sometimes a 7 which turned out to be a 10 at one meeting at Scunny, I remember, when you took the body shell off, welded some bits to it. Yeah. That turned some heads on the day. But
twice.
Yeah. What potential did you see in it then? This concept.
Funny. I mean, if you remember years ago, I bought a motorbike for the road, and I rode it and thought, Christ, that's a good engine. I could build a grasser out of that. Well, I did the same thing with the diesel. I bought a diesel road car for the missus, and it was mega. It was like a little Golf, 140 horsepower diesel turbo Golf. But the mid-range on it was phenomenal. You know, the pull that you get from a diesel. And I thought, that's such smooth, linear power and torque that if I can get it geared right, I can make it work. So you've not got a massive amount of revs to play with. And I bought a 1.9 diesel Golf, put a big turbo on it. I put a jam speed turbo on it, bigger injectors. Couldn't get it to bloody run. It wouldn't run. Anyway, eventually we managed to hotwire the ECU and got it running, and ran that in a 7. And ran it sort of rounding about a little bit. Didn't do a massive amount with it, but I ran it around a little bit. It was okay. Again, trouble with it out of the grid. You can't spool a turbo up on a diesel like you can a petrol. You can't put your foot hard down and hold it on a rev limiter to get it to spool the turbo. So all you can do is just rev it up and dump the clutch. Now, sometimes you'll get some boost and sometimes you don't. You may remember me at Tardy Big at a bass round, flipping the 10 clean over in its own length. And that day, it got like a bit of boost. And when I dumped the clutch, it wheelied, which had never wheelied before in its life. And I was alongside Andy Onshaw. I was in grid 8 and he was in grid 7. I thought, well, I can't let my foot out of it. I'm just keeping going to that first corner. And thought that. And when I dumped the clutch, it just went over in its own length. I couldn't believe it. Landed on the roof. Anyway, but once it was rolling, it had good track speed and traction. The traction's unbelievable on them. So I ran the 7 for quite a while. And then I thought, it would be better in a 10 because it'd be a bit lighter. So I was at IK then, racing at IK. So I took the body shell off and I riveted some alley panels on the side bars at either side, aluminium roof on it, made a little nose cone for the front, and turned up. And went, what the hell is this? I said, well, I'm going to build a 10. This is just to see how well it goes. So I raced it at IK, and Darren Cornwall was behind me, right up behind me, and he couldn't get past me. And when he came in the pits at the end of the race, he looked like Sterling Moss. When he took his goggles off, he had black lines around where there was flesh because the black smoke had filled him in. He was spitting. He says, I can't see bugger all. I said, was it dusty? He said, no, bloody black smoke. Yeah. Oh, dear me. Poor old Darren. Anyway, yeah. But I built a 10 then. I used the same engine and box. And when I put it in the 10, I found that I'd had a vacuum pipe on the wrong way round all the time when I had it in the 7. Really? And it wasn't opening the variable valve turbo. It was just stuck shut was the turbo. It was just on its smallest setting. So I found that, and it straight away, it was loads quicker. And me and Jade raced that all year. It was a funny thing to race because if you slowed it down into a corner and you were sort of pottering around the corner, when you put your foot down to drift it, it didn't zap like a bike engine does. It wouldn't break traction with the back wheels. So you could get it understeering. It would understeer if you didn't just quite. So you had to sort of keep it drifting all the way around the corner. But that was its positive as well as its negative, because when you accelerated down the straight, nothing put power down like it. It was like a big elastic band. It just whoosh, and then you're at the end of the straight. So yeah, and that would a good car, was that? Yeah, definitely the red one. Yeah.
Did it never suffer any lagging or anything? You managed to find your way around that, so you could set the torque to work.
Yeah. It wasn't massively powerful, that one. That one was probably 240 horsepower, that one, but it had like 350 pound-foot of torque. Yeah. On our dyno, when we had the 16 valve one, we had it up at 460 horsepower and like 500 pound-foot of torque one day, but you couldn't see the yard for black smoke. You can really wind them up. But I thought, well, we'll maybe moan a bit about the black smoke, so I better not, But yeah, they're an interesting thing as a diesel, definitely.
Yeah, do you think it's probably had its chance now, and we'll not see diesels anymore, be trialled? I mean, the option's still there, but I suppose as we get further and further into the future, which the world is trying to create, I suppose diesels is going to start to run out, aren't they? So it's maybe had its time now, and I suppose you can have your name to that bit of history where I know one or two other diesels had been tried before. I remember Malk and Loredana Bose had one in a Class 6. That was an Isuzu. out of a 4x4.
Yeah, it was.
It had been tried before, but you stuck at it, and you had some success with it, as you say. You done well at meetings. Jake won the nationals with it. The only time probably a diesel will ever win it. So again, the family name has that history ticked off as well. So can't be wrong. Probably the only time where the diesel wasn't quite at its finest was when you went back to Class 6 and you put it in the Lupo. First off, it wasn't the fact that it was the diesel. It was the really, really narrow back axle you'd put on it. That's what made me giggle when I saw it. I think they were almost. I think the bodywork was sort of like, instead of people making the body have to make the bodywork wider, yours. It was like a foot each side inside the car. Interesting.
I'll tell you the trouble with that car. Shall I tell you the trouble with that car?
Is it getting it out of the gate?
No, the donor body shell was green. It was a green car, and it was the most bloody horrible thing in the world. It just didn't want to play ball. Nothing you did with it wanted to play ball, really. So I gave up with the bugger in the end. Just give up with it. At least I had 2 black flags at the nationals with that year. I mean, I've not had a lot of flags, but I went out the start grid and I got tagged from behind, spun sideways in front of the pack halfway through, went behind the finish line marshal and came back on, and the black flagged me. And I sort of protested, and they said, no, you were out of control. I said, well, yeah, I got tagged from behind, but anyway. And then if you remember, it was tardy big, and it was really, really rough. Yeah. And we went down into the bottom corner, and E5, Mr. Manning, he hit a bump, and it flicked him full sideways, and he stopped in front of me, and I braked, but I was in fresh air because all 4 wheels were off. When I landed, I actually managed to go around the back of him, and the next car came and spun him round. Right. And they said I'd hit him. And so I got a black flag for that. And that ended up, I never went in the 30. I thought, oh, bollocks. I ain't going to do the good now with 2 black flags. So that was just that sort of look with that car. So I give up. Yeah.
Well, it was a spirited effort. trying to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in fairness,
the theory was that he would put.
It was, sorry.
The theory was that he would put power down.
Yeah.
The theory was that he would put power down because of the soft power delivery. And in fairness, when it was going, it was all right. But I had all sorts of daft issues with the car, and sometimes you just get that. So I just pulled the plug on it, and can't remember what I did next. What did I do next? You'll know better than me.
Well, I'm hoping that we're going to talk about your Class 3. I don't recall you doing much.
Yeah.
We're almost actually to the present.
No.
Oh, what did we do first?
Bloody hell, yeah. Class 3. I mean,
now,
I'll tell you why I built it. I'll tell you why I built a Class 3. John Farrer had a car, that Swift, with a Chevy engine in it, and he was struggling with it handling-wise. And he said to me, just jump in that car, will you, and tell me what's wrong with it. So I jumped in his car at a Trent meeting. It was only a little meeting. Jumped in the car, did a few laps in it, and I said, too soft at the back, it needs an anti-roll bar, it needs this, it needs that. So he brought it to me, and I did what I said, raced it at the next meeting with him, and then he raced it, and it was loads better. So he said, oh, brilliant, marvellous. And I said, I reckon I could make one of these go. But everybody at the time said, you can't make a Chevy work in Class 3. Derek Lynch had one, and that had sold to 2 or 3 different people. Paul Watson had one in an A35, and he'd struggled to get it to turn. A lot of people had struggled to get them to turn. Now, there's a lot of people say to you, a Class 3 must turn in mint because of all the weight over the front wheels. And it's the exact opposite. It's the weight over the front wheels that kills you turning. And they're an animal. They're an absolute animal. Especially
on a wet track.
Because of the weight. Yeah. But it's called the polar moment of inertia. So what it is, if you imagine if you've got a little bloke and you've got a big bloke, and you walk up to the little bloke and go, push, and you push him, he'll fall over. You push the big bloke and he hardly moves. Well, when you come to the end of the straight, when you turn the steering, your left front wheel becomes the most important wheel on the tyre, on the car, momentarily. And as you turn, that has got to get the mass of the engine from going straight ahead to turning right. And the polar moment of inertia is what keeps you pushing straight on. So if you've got a Chevy engine in the front, naturally you've got more weight than a little Vauxhall or a Duratec or what have you. So I knew that we would suffer with the front end. But I wanted to build one to sort of prove you could do it. And I know that everybody else had suffered with this polar moment of inertia for a long time. So I built it, obviously, to the rule book as far back as you can, as light as you can at the front, and, you know, the big battery in the back, etc., etc. All the normal things with the three. Went to the first meeting, and it would turn some laps, and other laps it wouldn't. And it was a nightmare. It wouldn't do what I wanted it to do. Yeah. And it was unreliable. You'd do 8 laps, and the thing would turn every time. And on the 9th lap, you'd be nearly in the fence, and you'd done nothing different. You think, well, why? You know, why were you doing that? And I put Jade into the car, and she struggled with it because it didn't turn reliably. This is a big problem, you know, when you're trying to get around it. So the first year, I had bits of issues sort of getting it to turn, and then that was compounded. I think it was the first year we went to the South Wales Bass. And I was doing well in the car because it's a big track, you know, the car was good. But I couldn't turn the car after the first bend. Every time I went into the first corner or one lap in, you'd turn right and the steering would pack in, the power steering would pack in. And I messed and messed and messed. I changed computers, I changed this, I changed the motors, I changed that. I tried all sorts. You couldn't steer the car without power steering. It's so heavy on the steering. Welded diff at the back, loads of weight, because this thing weighs a ton. You know, it's a heavy car, heaviest car out pretty much in the class and in grass tracking. So you're struggling. And when the power steering fails, you're just hanging on. Well, Jade couldn't race it. You know, she couldn't. She led into the corner at the Nationals, turned in, nothing. You know, it went straight on. And so she was suffering badly with it. And then I found out that the car had a knock on the wheel, and there's a little sensor inside the power steering, and there's a spring, and it had made, there's 2 springs that sort of centralise this sensor, quite stiff springs, and one of them was slightly damaged because it was shortened, it was soft. When you turned right at the end of the straight, you were on the brakes and turned at the same time, and it overloaded the ECU, and it clicked the ECU out, and that's all that was wrong with it. And I changed the column, and I cured it. But it took me like all year to learn that. Yeah. So the second year with the car, it was loads better because it steered and it did what you wanted it to do. And then I sold that car to Keith Kelly and built a new one, which I put on trailing arms. The theory being that trailing arms would give me more traction. And the opposite was the case to start with. And I struggled with it. And I mean, I understand trailing arms. I understand the theory. And I was struggling with it. But I battled on with it and got it at the end of 2018. Yeah, 2018 to be quite sort of competitive. Put it in a Sawyer Starlet shell, and then we got into lockdown this year, and I started looking at the Starlet, and it wants a new shell on it. I'm thinking, well, I might put it in something different, and I found an A35 on the seafront at Skegness. So I rung the bloke. I said, what's it like? He said, well, it's been under a sheet for 20 years. I don't know. And he's 100 yards from Skegness seafront. Yeah. So I went, I took bumps on it, and it wasn't bad. The shell was pretty good. And he said, it'll start, you know. And I said, well, I'll have a go. So I have a thing for the garden for pumping weed killer with. I put half a litre of petrol in it, took it with me, plugged it onto the carburettor, pumped it up, put some petrol in it, put my jump leads on and just turned it over twice and it started. So I drove it on the trailer. And I've got a bit of video of me round our pond at home drifting this A35 that's not run for 20 years. So in first lockdown, I built it into an A35. yeah, and that's sort of where we're at pretty much up today. I've just taken the shell off it. I'm just altering a few bits, ready for Thorpe in a photo. So yeah.
Well, you,
yeah.
You'd actually dabbled with working on Class 3s back in about '98, I think, with John Farrer. John, who was one of the top contenders at the time when he had his Peugeot 205. I think you did some back axle developments on it, and I think I remember Jeff nicknamed them plod rods, which I thought was fairly comical. Did you not have any interest in trying saloons or Class 3 then, or was your focus was because Z cars was really taking off?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I was sort of pretty famous for specials, and we sold a lot of 7s, and the order book was always full. You know, you make the bones about it. To develop something else, you've got to obviously spend the time and money and effort on it. So when you've got a queue of people wanting Class 8s and 10s and what have you, you build what's there in front of you, which is available and simple and easy to do. And then obviously you go, if there's something different. I mean, I saw Class 3 as a challenge because I'd driven John's car and I sort of could see the problems. I thought, well, I'm going to try and make this work. And in fairness, there's quite a lot of Chevys out there now. You know, a lot of people have sort of joined in and they're going well. You know, we've done some development on them, which is sort of what happens in every class. It's, you know, I mean, the fastest car out there is that one of Sam Gould's. You know, what a thing that is. You know, but you look at it, it's 11 years old. Martin Gould is an extremely clever fella with engines and Class 3s. His granddad raced Class 3. You know, their pedigree comes from years of it. And he's a bloody good driver. You know, what a kid to race. You know, you race him, you know you're going to race. He'll go as fast as he can. But there's no banging and bashing. You know, he's just a real nice lad who's recently been a dad. So well done, boy. But yeah, you know, and he was a target, really. You think there's a car there that I can judge myself from, because I know that if I get close to him, I've made it. You know, it's a bit like the Terry Brown scenario, really, from years ago. There's a man, you know, there's a man there that reliably goes and goes and goes. Very respected in the class. So yeah, let's see if we can beat him. And I have beat him on occasion, as have other people. But it's once in a blue moon, like, you know. I'm hoping the revised version beats him a bit more often. But we'll have to see. You know, that'll be apparent later on. But yeah, the good thing about Class 3 has been, and probably still is that quite a lot of the lads in it are older. They've been around for a while. You know, they've got a fair bit of respect for each other, and they don't do wild things. You get an odd one, obviously, but you can have some right good racing and a bit of camaraderie. You know, the camaraderie is quite good in the class as a whole. So I quite like that as well. You know, we're all just pleased to be still racing. I think we're not dead.
Oh dear. Well, with your Class 3 career, there, I mean, you've been very, very busy with it. Like when I spoke to Jade as well. This is probably one of your biggest challenges with a car. Or I know you've had a couple of versions of the Micra, but you was constantly developing it, and this is actually a great thing because it shows that there's still stuff for you to learn, regardless of 40 years in the sport. You're still learning away. You're still trying to make the car better. You don't get it to something and think, oh, that was all right, I'll leave it now. You straight away thinking, yeah, that was good, but can we get a bit more? You got to the end of the Micra, not last year, the year before. And do you think with that version you've reached its pinnacle and it couldn't do any more? Is that another reason why the change, or do you think there was some more you could have found?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the Micra was on a big axle, a massive axle from America. Big sort of Ford 9-inch thing with discs and everything on it. You'll never break it. But it was a solid axle. And a solid axle's okay, and it seems to be the thing to have in Class 3. Everybody runs axles pretty much. There's very few trailing arms. So I wanted to try trailing arm suspension. And I suffered with it quite badly. for a while, and I've got it right now. But boy, have I had to dig for that. That's not been easy. To make it work on trailing arms has been a bit of a challenge. But now I've done that, I wouldn't mind going back to an axle at some time and see whether I could improve on what I've improved now, the other way around. But a trailing arm gives you so much more ability to adjust the car. You can only have the certain wheelbase, and basically your rear axle's square. But on a trailing arm, you can tow the rear wheel in and out, and you can cure understeer, you can make it oversteer, you can change it to the conditions of the track. So there is some advantages with it. But boy, it takes some sorting out. And I know Jed Power sort of said, "Oh, you don't want trailing arms on," because, you know, we tried them, and some race meetings are brilliant and some they're not. Well, I've worked out why, and now I know what to do in every circumstance. So yeah, on a polished track, out the grid, they're hopeless, or they were, and I've solved that, you know. But I was a long way solving that issue. If there's some grip in the track, they're great. You know, it just it is horses for courses. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I'll probably stay in Class 3 for a while because I do quite like the class. You know, the car's built, the car's good, and you know, I have a hankering. I've just sold the Class 10. I've got a pair of engines for another Class 10, so I'll build another Class 10 probably during this season, ready for next season, and then we'll go. You know, I'll start back racing 2 cars again. But for now, I'll focus on the 3 for this year and just see if we can do any good.
Yeah. Would a part? I mean, I'm not technologically minded at all, but would a trailing arm issue maybe be because obviously when you run them on specials, you've got all the weight over them, like the engine, gearbox, whatever. But in a 3, you've got so much weight. So could that have played into it?
Yeah, it can. I mean, you got to think sort of 5 feet, 6 feet in front of the back axle. You've got an engine that weighs probably 250 kilos, and you've got a bloke sat in front of the back axle. Whereas on a special, the effect of how the arm lifts, like I explained in the last video, it's got to lift that engine. I mean, on my drive, I can pick the front wheels off that 3 of mine. It picks the front wheels. Oh, yeah. It don't pick them for long. It picks them like 20 mil and carries them probably a car length. And then a few yards out, when it hooks up, it picks them up again. So I've about got it as good as I can get it now. I don't think I can get much more out of the trailing arms on this. Yeah. Whereas before, on the axle, I could get the front wheel to lift 4 inches. One front wheel would lift 4 inches and the other would just hover. So there is, you know, you were getting 100% drive with the axle. And in all honesty, you know, I've raced my old cars, I've raced other people's versions, I've raced Sam all the time. And I think I'm closer now than what I have been. So, you know, you've got to sort of judge it on what your results are and how the car feels in a race. So,
so I take it obviously last year we got these practice events in, and it worked out ideal as a way. You got a couple of outings in the A35. Was you initially pleased then with how it went from the off? Because obviously I take it wheelbase is shorter, is it, a little bit, and it's a shorter car in general.
Yeah.
So weight's more compact. And you've got less room to play with.
Yeah, there's just less of everything. I mean, I saved 100 kilos on the car, you know, which was the big aim, was to save weight on it. Because what happened at the previous Nationals in 2019, I led out the grid. In fact, I was first to the corner every time that meeting, and I couldn't stop the car. The car, because it weighed over a ton, I couldn't stop it compared to these lads. I mean, at one point, I'm going into the bottom corner, and a lad came up the inside of me, and one came out on the outside. You couldn't place the car to stop somebody coming past you like you normally can at the map. There's just no way, and I couldn't stop it. So I was 7th, I think, in the end. But truth is, I should have probably won it. But with 100 kilos ballast on board, you know, literally big bloke, big heavy car, you just loads more weight than anybody else, you know. So it's just like a bloody super tanker compared to a light racing yacht, you know. So it's very depressing watching everybody come fast.
The problem is, you've got the issue then, haven't you? Because you're on a track surface which doesn't suit the car as much as the others. Because as soon as you put your foot down, you've got all this wheel spin, and then you've got to just as you get down the straight again, you've sort of got your grip back, and then you've got to stop again. That's always the challenge with that track. But again, I mean, you've got to get to the corner first, and nobody wants to brake first. They all want to be the last one to brake, and if you miss it by a split second, that can obviously cause the issue. But it's good that you're not giving up and you want another crack at it. That's good.
Well, I knew what was wrong with it. I was going around thinking, I need better brakes on this. I need to lose some weight out of it. How the hell can I lose weight out of it? So smaller cars, obviously. And it's amazing the amount of weight that you can chop out of it. The prop shaft's like a foot shorter. And you think, well, it's a foot short, yeah, but there's like a kilo tube, prop shaft tube. And as you start adding things up, it sort of makes a difference. So, I mean, we'll see where this one ends up. But yeah, it's sort of going back to the single bike engine 7 versus the 7s at the time. Now I'm the one with all that weight and trying to beat these lightweight cars. So, it's physics in it. It's the mass that you're trying to hold tight to the tyres that's difficult. People often say to you, well, you're going to go around in circles. Hey, come and have a go, mate. You come and have a go at going around in circles. You might be some fancy time. You just go in a straight line start, 5 or 6 laps if you're lucky, and different conditions. Put some water on the corner, then see how clever you are. There is massive skill. And I'm not saying I know full well I'm not the best driver out there, but I like to make the car as good as I can. And part of the challenge is the car. It's always been the challenge is that, and the development and moving the side of it forward. So you get the buzz of having built it and raced it, and if you win, brilliant. That's the thing. So, but yeah, you're up against it nowadays because everybody's got good tackle, haven't they? I mean, the tackle's tremendous now. So you've really got to drive out your skin. But yeah.
Yeah, you have, definitely. But no, like I say, it's good that you're still buzzing for it all these years and you're still keen to go out there. You might not, you have sort of said that results aren't quite as important to you, but you want to have what you create work. That's what you want. I mean, if you've got that car working absolutely perfectly, but yet you might only finish third, that might be better than you actually winning a race and it not quite there. That's what you're aiming for.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you sort of look at results. I've had loads of good results, and I've had poor results, and I've had controversial things, and it's just a life in racing. That there hasn't been a racing driver that hasn't had some controversy or a problem or a breakdown or what have you. It just happens. It's racing. And you get to accept it a bit more when you get older. I go for the companionship. I mean, I will see people at Scunny in a fortnight who I haven't seen, some of them for probably 2 years. And you'll say, oh, how are you doing, mate? And the camaraderie that is there in general in the pits is tremendous. And the fact that it's a family sport and your kids can go and your grandkids and that, it's fantastic. So I think the race in some ways is incidental, although it's a big part of it for me. I mean, I still love my racing. I'm not going to give up racing. You will have to bury me in my car. It's as simple as that. Because as long as I'm fit enough to clamber in and out a bit, and it is a bit of a performance. The A35, if you video me getting in that, it's like a major operation getting in it. Sliding across the tunnel and oh dear me. But I get in, and once I'm in, I'm comfortable and I'm safe, so that'll do. But yeah. It's
I still reckon, Chris, before you even get near your last day, you'll have built several more cars by then, and you'll have continued to change how it goes. We're gonna go back to Jade now, because it's not only you. I mean, you've got this creative mind. Like, if you wrote down every single car just that you've had, I mean, not one is the same as the one before. Really, I mean, apart from your little diesel exploit where you just took the body shell off, and that's the closest two cars ever got together. I mean, every single car was different. But when we spoke to Jade about it, I mean, obviously, you're the one who's got to create it and then learn how it all works and then learn what happens when it doesn't work. Jade, obviously, tremendous driver, as we've said, but it must have been a bit difficult for her to get used to all these different contraptions that you put together. But I think overall she'd done pretty well with the machines that you'd presented, and you must be quite pleased with how she'd adapted to each one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I suppose when you build cars for a living, and when you've built a lot of cars, you know roughly where you want to be setting them up, and then you can cure most of the problems fairly simply. So, you know, the likes of Jeff Beresford and Graham Bennett and all them that jump in a car and race them, they have a fair idea. You know, you're not going to be far away with the car early on. It's when you build something like that 3 that really tests you, because some of the things that worked on everything else didn't work on the 3. Just didn't work. Bloody hell, why? And then, and because of the way my mind works, I want to know why it doesn't work. You know, why doesn't that work? And I need to know so that I can understand what to do to cure it or make it better. So you end up soul searching a little bit. And it's at the start, when we would do 2 or 3 laps and they would end up nearly in the fence. You think, well, was that me? Did I really cock that corner up? Because I am self-critical. You know, I will look at myself. Think, you know, I don't think I did. Why does it do that? And the majority of it was just to do with the weight in the front. But I mean, I talked to John Whitehouse one day about it, and I think he'd borrowed Sam Gould's car. And when he came back in the pitch, he said, how the hell do you drive that? And John Whitehouse is one hell of a drive. You know, as I have, the fella can pedal a car. And when he gets out and says that, how the hell do you drive that? And that's the best car in the country. You know, you think, yeah, there's something in this. And they do take some driving. So that, again, you know, this is, I suppose, bit of a horses for courses. That's probably why a lot of the class 3 men stay in class 3, because they've sort of got their head into what they're doing. If you put them in a 5 or a 7, they just jump into it and go, bloody hell, this turns in. You know, and it's all to do with no weight to turn. As soon as you turn the steering, it just turns, as long as the wheels are on the floor. So yeah, very interesting. And you know, like I say, I'll keep battling on with the 3 a little bit longer. I'd like them to change the rules a bit in 3. I think we're too mired in a CC limit and a valves per cylinder. There's a lot of modern engines that could go in there if you drop the 2 litre limit and let people have cheaper engines, because it's a lot of money in the engines. But that was another reason why I chose a Chevy, you know, because the engine was $5,000 for 500 horse. I thought, well, I'll have more horsepower than I need. It'll be reliable. I'll bolt one of them buggers in, you know. And then I chose to put it on a 2-speed auto box, you know, because I thought, well, I'll have an auto box in it. They're bomb-proof. They're 800 quid. Sorry, 1,200 quid. Cheap gearbox, you know. And I just literally built it around sort of the engine and box, and away you go. Yeah. Love it.
Good. Well, we go from the mightiness of the Chevy for now to you mentioned it before, but your exploits into F600. I think it's probably the most fun you've looked to have had in a car. Like when I've seen you race in those cars, you do like on track. It looks like everybody is having such a good time in one of them. It's like they're all like happy little puppies running around the track. Yeah. Everything's happy and what drew? I mean, it's not had an easy life, F600.
No.
Say that back when you was building the junior special, there was people trying to campaign to get that in as the junior special, and it never came off because they didn't want, at the time, they didn't want kids racing bike engine cars, I suppose. But and it's gradually grown. It's not like other classes. I mean, up until recently, it's still been its own thing. It's sort of been a sport within a sport. Same as stock catch. They wasn't officially accepted as such, and they've had to try really, really hard to get that grace to be classed as now official. Because when it first started, they were thrown in with class 8s, and I'm amazed that people in the beginning stuck at it. Because when they were thrown in with class 8, they think, well, what's the point? You go to a meeting, you go to Harbour one day, and you'd be the only one there against half a dozen class 8s. Or you go to Scunny and you'd be against a full grid of class 8. Well, you'd be lucky to beat one of them. So it's straight away going to put people off. But they've campaigned and fought. And the class is brilliant now, and I think it now is actually officially a NASA class, isn't it?
No, it isn't.
Not yet.
They've not managed to do that yet. I mean, it's on the books to be discussed by the board, and I don't know what the outcome of that will be. But they've put a proposal together for it to become in as an official class. Which, I mean, to be fair, I'm a strong supporter of the class. It was started. The original concept was Adam Gilbertson and a few of them from Leewood, who had class 9s and got sick of spending money on engines and said, we want to keep class. Let's go back a step to that class 8 almost that I built, where it was a standard engine, cheap shockers, trailing arms, we'll put the engine in a certain place. And they set up some rules, literally on the back of a fag packet, and discussed them, and they all agreed they would build cars. So they all went home and chopped the back off the class 9s, turned up and raced each other. And they were all right. They weren't that clever, and they were all right. So then went on from there, and it's gone through various little incarnations since then. But there's a strong following for them, and I think it's affordable. I think the biggest thing with it is affordable. I mean, I got into it because my middle lad had been very ill, and he was at home and he wouldn't go back to work. He was like really in a bad way. And I built him an F600, and he jumped in it, went to his first race meeting, and the next day he went back to work. He'd been off work for like 4 or 5 months. They had a big operation. And I knew that if I could get him in a race car, and I've never built any of my kids a race car for themselves. I sort of don't believe in it, really. I'm a bit old-fashioned like that. You've got to earn it yourself. Jade was lucky because she was the only girl, and she could actually share the car. But I built Callum at 600, and he had a go to in it, and I had a go in it, and I went, bloody hell, that's all right, I'll build one for myself. So I set on straight away and built one for myself. And then I started racing Callum. And then I built my youngest lad one. Well, I can't leave him out now, can I? So I built him one, so the 3 of us would go racing. Well, I'll tell you, when you race your lads, you're the old bugger, you've got all the experience. They weigh half what you weigh. They're as mad as hatters, the bloody Callum's on it like straight away. And we had some stonking races throughout the 2 seasons that we raced together. I ended up winning the 600 nationals at Scunthorpe in 9. Still reigning champion because nobody's raced for it since. That's going to be the longest reigning champion, single champion ever, I think. But anyway, but yeah, and they're a hoot. You've got to drive the wheels off them. I mean, I with one gear on, I weigh like 20 stone. So you put me in one of them with a 600cc engine, I'm at a massive disadvantage. In fact, it's funny, one lad complained I'd taken the water pump off my car, and I put electric water pump on. And I rang the scrutineer and said, look, I put this electric water pump. Yeah, that's fine. No problem. And then the next meeting, there was hell on because they said, well, you're cheating. You've got a power advantage. You've taken your water pump off. I just put my arm around him. He weighed about 10 stone. I said, we're going to put 10 stone weight in your car. He said, well, you're bloody not. I said, well, that's what I weigh compared to you. Get on with it, And that was sort of the end of that. So I had to put my water pump back on. But yeah, it's good. It's really good. Really hard, close racing. I mean, Dave Smith from Stroud was laughing at me. I spoke to him the other month, and he said, I'll never forget you coming up the hill at Stroud at the Bass. He said, you had to go into first gear because it wouldn't come up the hill. And I couldn't get up the hill. Everybody else in 600 was going up in race gear. And I had to go down into first. God, amazing. Yeah. Oh, dear. Cracking racing. I mean, that meeting at Stroud, I raced Graham Foster Biggers, and
Yeah.
we were nip and tuck on here, and we passed each other every corner. He passed me up the hill, I passed him down the hill at the other end. Round and round and round and round and round. It was fantastic. You know, you come off the track buzzing as much as if it was a Class 7 race or whatever. It doesn't matter. They're not much slower than a special, any of the specials. They are light and nimble, and you've got to drive them. And them three things make you a better driver. Made me better in the three. It did really do me some good having to try that hard every race. You know, if you've got a decent car and you get in the front and you're sort of tidy and you don't make mistakes, it's almost boring. Whereas here, if you blink, there'll be three of them past you and it's shit, I missed that one. You know, so cracking, absolutely cracking. Yeah. Good
So
fun.
I suppose if you go back in F600s, you will campaign for only flat tracks, so you haven't got to go uphill anymore.
Yeah, and I want all the cars to be carrying the same load. So everybody's going to put 10 stone on the car to be equal to me.
Basically, we've got to strap a Chris Allanson onto every car so to make it equal.
Well, I could go on a diet. Well, that's a bit drastic, isn't it? Dieting, bloody hell, that's no good. Yeah,
I can learn from that. It's probably easier to put weight in other people's cars than take weight out yourself.
Yeah. But I mean, it almost proves one point, because people have gone mad on. We were talking about it in carbon fibre bits for the Class 8s and going ultra light. There actually probably is not that much difference in them. If you 4 or 5 stone, maybe even going to make that much difference. It's like 100 kilos makes a difference. Yeah. Dear me.
Well,
good.
Like I say, you did seem to enjoy it, and I suppose the nationals that they did, you must have enjoyed as well. I mean, I think your lad got second actually. It was a 1-2 family. But I sort of cheekily, because I was doing my failed attempt at the Grassing magazine, and I think I put the caption on that. I think it was something like 26 years later, Chris finally wins another nationals.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you,
a similar car. Really, when you look at it, it's a similar car because engine's in front of the drive. It's about 115 horsepower, you know, and it hardly put any tyres on the car. It was just a joy to race, you know. And if we go back a little bit to if it was a junior specials class, me, my grandson, and my daughter are all three the same size. We could share that car. I could race in men's, the lad could race in juniors, and Jade could race in ladies, and the car would stand it. From a marketing point of view, if I look at NASA as a business, there is something you can market, a car that 3 of you can share. All right, not forever, but for a time, you value, and if the car costs $6,000, it's $2,000 a piece, and you go home, all 3 of you have had a race in it. You know, if you've had 2 heats in the final with mum, 2 heats in the final with dad, and 2 heats in the final with kid, bloody hell, it's had 9 races. It'll stand it all day long, and it's cost you not a lot. It's nice and light. You can tow it behind a little saloon car. You don't have to have a fortune in a fancy trailer, you know, with bloody big campers and all the rest of it. It's sort of going back to a few years ago where the shockers are cheap, where, you know, you've got no fancy bits on it. You know, you look at Olin's dampers and things on these 8s, 9s and 10s and what have you. They're a fortune. I've got a pair on the 3. You know, I would never dream of buying them 20 years ago. I'd much rather put a £9 shocker on it, but I can't get away with it. In the class, I can't get away with it. So we've almost priced ourselves out of some of these cheaper classes and entertainment. You know, the entertainment value that would give a whole family must be, well, second to none. You know, and there isn't another sport in the country that they can do it. Mum, dad, and kid can't race in the same car. I mean, come on, that's going to be a big plus for us. Stock cars can't. You know, hot rods don't do it. So. Yeah, I think, you know, for me, it's nearly a no-brainer. But we'll have to have that discussion, obviously, in a public way. I mean, obviously, I'm floating the idea, if you like, now. But for me, tell me what's wrong with it. You know, come and tell me why we can't, rather than you know, just you can't say you can't do that. No, let's have a proper discussion about it and see whether we can do it.
Yeah,
I'm up for it anyway.
Yeah, and I think trying to get it, give it an official status would benefit further, because it's not around in every club or league. I mean, yes, it's hugely popular up our end of the world, and as we go further north, it's even more popular, and there are some seriously quick drivers. But down in the southern region, it seems to struggle a little bit. It's slowly getting there, but I mean, it's even popular in Ireland now as well. It seems to be in Wales and down south. It's still struggling a little bit. So I suppose getting it in front of the big audience every time, and I think it is helping by them racing at the Baz in the UK in front of crowds who don't always see these cars. And it is helping out. So it can only do good things, can't it? Surely, if it gets that bigger audience.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, I mean, I've raced pretty much everything: front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, saloons, specials, everything. I've had as much fun out of that 600 as any class I've ever had, and for peanuts. You know, that was one of the things. I mean, I was running 3 F600s for a season, plus the 3. I spent more on the 3 on tyres than I spent on the whole gaggle of 3 F600s, petrol, everything. I mean, they don't use petrol. They use like a pint of petrol a race. It's not like you've got, I mean, my bloody Chevy, it runs nearly 2 gallons a race when I'm on it. You know, well, that costs you money. You know, so you just look at things, and you know, if you're going to come into the sport and you were looking for a class for a bit of fun, that would be one that I would look at. You know, and I would look at it purely because it's a special and it's easier to keep. You can work on them easy, can't you? Get spanners onto, you know, sit in a nice little garage at home, single garage at home. You can work on it still. So there's lots of benefits to it, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see what the powers that be make of it and what the clubs and that say. You know, it's something that we're looking at. So hopefully we'll get it in. But
hopefully. I mean, it benefits, doesn't it, if we can get more options out there for people. That's sort of. Anyway, big question. Right. If you had both the cars, which would win? The 1993 Class 8 or your F600?
Oh. Do you know, I don't think there'd be anything in them. I really don't think there'd be anything in them. Maybe, the 93 Class 8 hadn't got a high-speed steering rack in it. It was a standard steering rack, and you had to twirl the wheel a lot to keep it straight. It was a pain in the ass for that. So you had to be wide awake. Probably when I was younger, I might have beaten myself now as an old fat bloke in the 600. but I don't think there's much in them. I honestly don't. Yeah. You know. Well, the results, when you go club racing with them and we mix with other classes, we can mix it with the other classes in a 600. Well, was it Terry Cox won the fastest man one year?
No, it was a guy from Trenton. It was a guy from Trenton. That was really annoying because I should have won that race.
Yeah, but you did. He did.
I know he did. It was down with rain. I'd won the fastest special on grass, and we went in the fastest man. I was second to a Class 8, and it spun right in front of me, and we got locked together, and the Poxy F600 went round us and won, didn't it? I were absolutely. Well, there you go. And that was my last ever race in the Class 9. Because I swapped it for a child.
But when you look at that, and you look at the fastest man, you know, that fastest man format where you race everything, that sort of shows where the F600s get to. Because the last fastest man at 2019, I pulled up and I was alongside Callum in the F600. And when we came, there were 2 runs of it. The first run of it, they reran it, but he was 4th. And we circulated. I don't know whether we did 1 or 2 laps, but anyway, we circulated and it was red flag. And then the second run, he was 5th. And I think he finished 5th, you know, in a 600. Yeah. So you look at it, and I mean, there was some good cars in that final. There was Dan McKenzie, Andy Oakby, obviously, myself, I can't think who the Class 9 lad was. There was a Class 9 lad there, I think. But there's some good specials in it. But the 600 was competitive. Or it's a small track and probably be polished a bit and all the rest of it. But, you look at it and you just think, you know what? You're having that level of fun. If you're only 10 yards slower over the length of the race, the buzz is still the same, basically. And when there's wheels around you and you're battling that lad in front of you, trying to get past him, that's where it's all about. You're planning your next move and, you're thinking what you're doing. So you get your racer's brain on, don't you? So,
yeah. I remember the first year F600s went into that fastest man race was 2010. Because I got second in the fastest man final. And Terry Cox, from a straight line start, he beat Paul Fackrell, who had been back racing a few years then with his twin. But yeah, straight line start, same track for everybody. It was a dry track. And the F600 passed the 10 and beat it. And it shows in the right scenario, the smaller car is as fast as any. It really does.
Yeah.
But I think... I would personally probably think I think the F600 might just pip it against the old 8, because when you look at that, I mean, track scenario would depend. I mean, if it was a grippy track really does bog the 600s down, doesn't it? That's one thing I notice. They do seem to pull the revs down quite a lot. But obviously, tyres now are better than they were then. I mean, the suspension wasn't too fancy on the 8s back then. They were pretty stiff. So they did bounce and bobble around a lot. So I think it would be an interesting concept to see what we do. But we've mentioned fastest man on grass, and that's a meeting that really you've held quite special for many years. It's probably the meeting you've done more than any. You were back doing it back in the 80s. You've been very successful at it. I hope I'm correct. 4-time fastest man winner, 3-time fastest special on grass winner. I was fortunate enough to win the fastest special on grass once. That year, the F600 won the fastest man in 2015. And to me, it was just an honour to have my name on the same trophy as all those people, because back then you had 3 big meetings. You had the Nationals, of course, that was above anything. Then you had the Map Open and you had the fastest man on grass. They were the big 3. Yeah. And this was sort of like, as you say, back in the early days when you would travel to Map and you would go against those big names. Then the end of August, it'd be them coming to us. And it'd be like, right, I mean, yes, we had the Nationals, but this was really the real round 2. Where they would come to us and fight us on our sort of home turf. And like I say, you've enjoyed it for many years. You've been successful. What was it? I mean, the showground is, to me, it is the venue. The Lincoln Showground. I grew up there. It's the venue of all venues to me. I mean, those who were national traditionalists would probably say, what was the name of where the very early Nationals were?
Hanbury.
Hanbury, yeah. Hanbury. They would say Hanbury would be the venue. But for us, in Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, those regions, it was the showground. But what was it for you?
Well, I think the venues. I mean, it was such a superb venue. It was good to get to. It was big, it was open, it was flat. There was plenty of camping. And everybody came to it. The good guys came to it. The Lyndon Phelpses, Roger Bown, Terry Brown, they all came. So you were getting the away superstars coming. And I think the format appealed to so many people. The format's changed a little bit the last few years, but then it was racing, and then obviously you did your second day's racing and you did quarterfinals and all the rest of it. But when you raced there, the thing that appealed to me was actually you'd pull up alongside somebody in a 7. You didn't know whether you were going to dog them or not. You literally didn't know how good you were. You always thought your cars were quick, and then you wanted to pit it against another class. So you would get all sorts of it, and you get anomalies. Janet Ellis won one year in a class 7.
92.
She won fair and square. She drove the wheels off, the Metro. And you know, Terry Brown won a time or two. There was all sorts of people's names on the trophy. Walt Howarth started off. I think there's only 3 of us that have won it 4 times. There's myself and Bill Cooper. 4 of us won it 4 times, but there isn't many people won it 4 times. And it takes some winning. Dave Yeardley. Has Dave Yeardley won it 4 times?
I think it might be
4 of us won it.
And yeah, I'm not sure if it's Ian Stevenson or not, or whether he's won it 3.
No,
I think he's won it 3.
I think he's won it 3. But I tell you, it's a trophy that takes some winning, and it had a long history of taking some winning, because you could sort of cock up a little bit in 1 or 2 of your heats. You have to be in the top 4. Basically, on the second day, you've got to be in the top 4. So sometimes you'd play the long game because there was no trophy. It was a qualifier. So get to the finish. And rather than throw it away and spin or do something stupid, so you would drive with your head a little bit. And that sort of always suited me to do it in stages. And I always won when I was second in the specials final. Every time I won, I was second in the specials final and kicked my ass for not winning the final. But it actually turned out to be right in the end. But here's an interesting fact for you. I've won it over a period of, I think, 25 years, in 2 centuries and 2 millennia. That'll never happen again, because I just happened to win it in sort of the late 80s, in the 90s, came back and won it in 2014. And that just happens to be in another millennia and another century. So you're not gonna get that one again for a long while. So
yeah, well,
diesel.
Yeah, you did actually. I was in the fastest special race when I got knocked out of that because I had no front brakes. I had my front corner run over in one of them, and it completely knackered the outside front brake. This was in the run up, like the qualifier for the fastest special. So that I had the outside front corner knocked off. We didn't have time to fix it for the rerun, so we went out. Every time I braked, car pitched into the left, completely the opposite way to where I wanted to. We got through. I think we finished 3rd. I think you won that one actually. And then my dad, right, let's try and do it. We'll swap the front brakes over. We'll put the good one on the inside, and then we'll get rid of the outside so it'll turn in. Well, we didn't set the brakes back up, did we? Because we ran out of time. So there I am sat on the start line. I think I was between you and a Class 8. And I got to the corner and we was all 3 abreast, really, really tight. And I pressed the pedal, it went straight to the floor, didn't it? Next thing I'm climbing up over both of you. And then I was out. Yeah. But then you went on and won that. And the fastest diesel on grass. So I'm not sure how expected of that you was, but it must have been pleasing to do it.
It was a mistake. It was a complete mistake, because I'd gone to IK to the 2-day meeting down there, and as I pulled into the field, Derek Lynch rang me and said we're cancelling because it was flooded.
Yes, yeah.
So I turned around and I came back and I got to Lincoln. I said to Mrs., well, we're going past Lincoln, we'll go to the fastest man then. So we pulled into the field, and Sandy said, there's a space here, pull here. And I pulled straight in through the fence, parked up. That was it. That was me finished, because the field was full. So there just happened to be a gap big enough for me and my camper. So I parked there and I unloaded, and then I just raced and raced and raced. I ended up with it. I couldn't believe it. And then a week later, I boiled it. I boiled it at fastest man, blew the head gasket. And we didn't know we'd blown the head gasket till we get to Ladies National weekend after, and she had to run all weekend with water spouting out the back of the bloody thing like a fountain. And I just kept topping it up with water. I said, just keep going, it doesn't matter. And she ended up with Ladies National with it. I said, it's only got to do 4 races, don't panic. And then we mended it. We skimmed the head and mended it. But yeah, bloody hell, yeah. But it was good. It was really, really good. And it is a title that I hold quite dear. I think because of the quality of the opposition and because of the different opposition. Yeah. I remember I was at last time we ran, I pulled up with the 3 alongside Andy Upby in the saloons final, and I thought, I'm going to have you to corner him, boy, and I dogged him to corner. I didn't beat him, but my target was to beat him to corner. That's bloody going some in a 3 against the front line, proper class 7 with a proper driver in. He said he was parked in a puddle, but I think he was bullshit, to be fair. just tell him he was dry.
I was going to say it must have made you feel quite. I know you mentioned about racing against grandkids, but crying out loud, you actually grew up going racing with Mike Colby, and there you are, sat on the start line with his lad.
Yeah. I've raced him a time or two. I did a meeting at Stunny where I said I'm just going to play with the 7s today, like a late meeting in the year, and I was like 3rd 3 times in the racing. Against some half decent 7s. So there isn't much in the cars when they get rolling. It's the initial step. And some of them are very spectacular. I mean, you watch the 7s with the good young lads in, and they're wheeling and they're on one wheel round the corners. And I think, bloody hell, could I do that? Don't think I could. But, at the end of the day, it's the spectacle of them. The 7s, it's just everybody runs the fence, don't they? So, yeah.
Well, this is how the 8s have gone, isn't it? I mean, look at them now. I mean, they are stunningly fast. I mean, no disrespect to obviously when you first went into Class 8, but back then they were still using not Pintos. They were in 9s, weren't they? But they were still using car engines back then, like very, very basic car engines. I mean, Class 8 was, back in the 80s, the slowest specials class by a long way. I mean, it wasn't until the late 90s that a Class 8 would win the National Champion of Champions because they were too small and didn't have the power. I mean, Class 10s always won it because they had the brute force and that. But classes have come on massively, and that is partially down to yourself. But I just like how you do reflect back on the fastest man on grass, going back to that, because as I say, that's where I grew up. It's where a lot of us around here grew up. That fastest man weekend was our holiday. We never went on holiday. We never went abroad. We never travelled anywhere. So, but the fastest man on grass was our holiday, and we only lived 20 minutes away. But for a kid growing up there, or even as a driver growing up around that showground tap, it was like I always spent my time looking at the gate to see who was going to turn up, or looking across at the A15, and I just thought everything was magical. This was before I knew the nationals, and to me, it was just a magical thing. But which of your fastest man wins then would you say is your best one? I've been down as 99, 94, 99, and 2013.
Yeah, well, 99, I borrowed Martin Hans's 10 because he wanted to sell it. He said, "Can you sell this car for me?" I said, "Well, if he lends it, I'll go fastest man. See if I can do any good." So I won it and sold it. So it worked for him. I don't know. They're all pretty special in a different way, because the diesel was special because nobody thought you could do it. It was one of them. A lot of people poo-pooed the diesel, really. They didn't. A lot of people liked it because they liked the black smoke, and it was sort of a bit marmitey, really. Some people liked it, some people hated it. So that was quite good. But yeah, I mean, I won it in the 10. Did I win it in the Class 8?
No, 99 was actually in the Class 8. It might have been 94 when you did Martin Hans's car.
Maybe then, yeah.
99 was in the Class 8.
Yeah, I actually won it one more. I won it in the year that Roger Bang won it, but the black flagged me in the pits. It was a real controversial decision. You maybe don't know that. You maybe weren't about then, but I was in the 10. No, it was. What year did Roger Bang win it?
89.
89.
Yeah.
That was the year of the controversial nationals with Terry Brown.
Yeah.
And it was the same year we got out of the grid, and I was third to the corner. Paul Fackrell was in front, and Kevin Kettlewell. You remember Kevin Kettlewell? He had Dolomite Sprint engine, Class 9, real quick. Kevin Kettlewell was behind Paul, and they went into the first corner, and he just touched the back of Paul Thackrell as he went. He just gave him a little nudge, and then they went into the next corner, and he nudged him again. Bloody hell, I thought they're going to tangle these two, and I'm sat pretty here, I'll be past. And they went round another lap or so, and then he went down, and they had little car tyres on the infield in them days, and a car tyre came up and hit Paul Kettlewell's grill and crushed his hand on the steering wheel. And he really did it, Paul Thackrell, that time, and he pushed him wide, and I shot through. Well, Paul Thackrell thought I'd hit him. He thought I'd tagged him 3 or 4 times. He didn't know it was Paul Kettlewell. Anyway, we get round into the next corner, and Thackrell run up the back of me and wiped his front suspension out on the back wheel. Front left suspension on my right rear. Carried on and ended up nose into the tyres. We finished the race, and I go in the pits, and he complained that I'd rammed him because he genuinely thought I'd rammed him. And so he came in the pits and flagged me. I said, well, I haven't hit him. I never hit him. I said it was Paul was in front, and he tagged him a couple of times, and I sat there watching it happen. So, it wasn't me. So they said, well, your black flag, we're going to give it to Bimbo in the Class 3, who was second. And Bimbo said, I watched Paul go on, and Chris never hit him. It was Paul Kettlewell. And they tried to give it to somebody else, and in the end, they gave it, nobody would have it. None of the locals would have it. And Roger said, well, I'll have it then. And so he ended up winning it in the end. And when you watch the video, you can see this tyre come up and hit the front of Kettlewell's car, and you can see him plainly go bump, bump, bump. Just circumstances, just one of them weird things. That you talk about things going right and wrong in racing, and there's nothing you can do. You're a driver, you sat there, the decision's been made, there's no video review or anything like that. Nowadays, we might have had a video review of that, and they would have said, oh, yeah, you're right, Chris, and I'd have been reinstated. But you're not, it was the times we were in. So I always think I did win it 5 times, to be fair. But anyway.
But no, to me, I don't know if I've got that one. I was just trying to check it up now to see. I don't know if I've actually got footage of that. Well, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, nothing can be changed now because it happened that many years ago. But it'd be interesting to see and look at it back. Obviously, we studied the 1989 Nationals one in a bit of depth on Latin. And I know I haven't actually. So that one's missing out my collection, which isn't. In fact, no. I have got some footage, but whether it's got the actual big race on it, I'm not sure. That's some homework for me. Anyway, Chris, we've spoke about a lot, and every single story has been fascinating because every single thing you have done, there is a story behind it and there is a reason behind it. But sort of talking about it now, and obviously the first part was a week ago when we did it, but do you reflect back on any of it that you've done? Anything like, that were good, that like I'm happy that happened? Or I mean, do you look at it the other way and think, I wished I didn't do that, and I wish something else had come along instead, or what? I mean, how do you reflect back on everything you've done?
I think to be honest with you, I'll stand by everything I've done really over the years. I'm happy with what developments have come out of sort of our stable. With the first one to do trailing arms, bike engine cars, twin engine cars, right up to the sort of Chevy, and thinking, well, you can't make it work, and we have done the diesels. So a lot of the development stuff, which has always been a big part for me, is the development, really. The using your brain to get an advantage. Like I say, I don't consider myself as good a driver as a lot of them. There's some of the drivers in our sport are phenomenal, and there would be, world beaters in rallying and whatever. Whatever you put them in, they've got that talent. We don't necessarily have the money in our sport to progress that on, but within our sport, there are true champions, and still are. We're still developing them. And this young batch that are coming out now, you're going to see. These that are starting at 10 are going to be better than the ones that started when they were 14. We are breeding a new class of kids racing to get them better than what they already are, I think. But you follow the career of Cameron Mills and some of them that were early in the juniors and in the specials and things, they're tremendous racers. The likes of Andy Oakley, I mean, obviously I knew him since he was a little lad, went hot rod racing, and I watch him and think, bloody hell, this guy, he just seems to find gaps and speed. Where the hell does it come from? I can't do it. I as good a driver as him by a long shot. And I know he's got good tackle, but he spends his life doing it. And I think probably to be part of a sport where so many people's lives revolve so much around it is a privilege, and I don't regret anything, really. I think, why regret stuff? There's things that you've done that haven't been too clever, and, but hey, we all make mistakes, don't we? Things go wrong, and you hold your hand up if you do something wrong. For me, I'm happy. And as long as I can keep racing, I bloody well will do. And I'll always have a smile on my face in the pitch, I'm not one for... My cup is always more than half full. It's very rare I'm grumpy. If I am grumpy, something serious has gone wrong. But, we just get up there, It's great.
Yeah, so I take it then... you've enjoyed the sport since day one. Like you've gone through every single possible scenario you could in the sport. A fan, a racer, a instructor, back to being just somebody to enjoy every possible aspect that the sport can bring. And if there's an opportunity for you to do it within it, you will do. You've gone and you've tried these things which a lot of people won't do. You went the F600 route and you found it to be some of the most fun you'd had. Hell knows, when it comes to the 2021 F600 Nationals, you might have a car together to take part in it because you won it last time and you might want to win it again.
Yeah.
But you do it to enjoy it. And that is something which has slipped away from a few in the sport, where everybody wants to be the best at whatever they set out to do, whether it's a hobby, whether it's life in general, whether it's work or what. Everybody wants to be the best at what they can do and what they can be in themselves. But you've said more than once that results aren't the be all and end all for you. As long as you go out and have a good day's racing, you go home at the end of it. Yeah, it'll be playing on your mind, saying what could we change for next time? If you've gone home enjoying it, then that is a win for you. And that's what it seems to have been since the day you started in autographs.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's such a release of sort of adrenaline and fun, and lots of people and your kids know, and your grandkids now know. I wander around the pits and see people and they're laughing and joking. You think, it's all right, this. It's all right, is this? Yeah, you see people getting fed up and things, but most of the time, there's a good atmosphere at Grassing. You sort of talk to everybody. I mean, you know everybody, Russ, because obviously you do the commentary and everybody knows you, but there's so many people know me, and I know so many faces. To be fair, I don't know everybody's name, because you're not necessarily racing, but they'll always say, "Now then, Chris, how are you doing?" And and that's the camaraderie, isn't it? So it's not just about the racing; it's about the whole gamut. And I think you go a long way to get a sport like ours. There isn't many sports like ours. I mean, I've had to go to the circuit racing, and I got on with everybody there, but there isn't the same atmosphere as there is at Grassing. It's not a family sport because the blokes are there racing. And the women and kids are there and, well, I don't really want to be here because what am I going to do all day in these pits in Hilton Park or wherever? So there's a lot of hanging about at Grassing, so you do a lot of chatting and leg pulling and looking at your cars and looking at somebody else's car. And, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? So that it's more than just the actual turning up and racing. You don't sit in your motorhome all day and then just turn out for your race, do you? No. You're at it all day. Right from the first minute you're there, you're paddling about and talking. And like I say, I'll see people in a fortnight's time that I haven't probably seen since the end of 2019. So it's sort of 18 months since I've seen a lot of these people. Some of the lads from Wales and things, some of them that are old customers or just acquaintances or people you've raced. And you say, "Now then, mate, how are you doing?" And we will have that sort of renewal of our sort of connection. So yeah, and it's good for that. It's good for the soul, I think. It makes you feel happy, and that can't be a bad thing, can it?
Well, it is. It's a release, isn't it? As you said, it's a release. Like when you go on holiday. If you go on holiday, you wake up in the morning and you're not actually worrying about work or what you haven't got any plans for the day. You're not worrying about jobs that need doing. You're just released from it, aren't you? And you're out there, and I think it is going to be special. Yes, we're going to have to be careful because don't forget we're still in this tricky time. We need everybody to be careful, look after themselves. I mean, everybody was pretty much almost the whole way across. Everybody was so good last year, respecting the rules on the day. Everybody parked sensibly in the pits. Everybody respected each other's distance and things like that. Everybody got on with it. People wore masks when need be and all that. And I think people will, yes, everybody's excited for in a couple of weeks when racing gets underway again and actual meetings. But I think that's something everybody was really, really good before. And I hope that continues where, yes, it's going to be great to see each other again. But as long as we all behave, hopefully then by the middle of the year, things will be closer to how we all remember the sport as that ultimate social side of things. I mean, it is autographs. I mean, when you get to the Nationals or a big event, it's a social party with some racing on the side. And that's, I know everybody's missed each other, but as long as we all behave and respect, then it'll help progress the sport further. And I suppose that's where the work's going to come into just making sure these early meetings run as smooth as can be. Yeah. And then that'll help continue to build on further down the line. So for yourself, though, obviously you can't wait to get back in the car because you need to know what changes work and what don't. And I'm sure you might have changed your mind by the time. Oh, have you?
Yeah, I've been testing today because I've just put a few new bits on the car. So I've been up and down my drive and around the bend at the end. It's like a grass track bend. So I've been testing already.
As long as you've not put any windows. But no, so Chris, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you these past two occasions. I mean, so many laughs in the first video because of the early stories. I mean, that's what I really set out to do with these. I want to know about people's way into the sport, how they got there, because everybody's was different. Some people were born into it. Some people found out through friends. Some people tried to arrest their friends to find a way in. and then just their journey and reliving memories and that. This is what I wanted GrassChat to be about. And like I said, I cannot thank you enough for the stories you've shared and everything you've told, because it's been wonderful. Like, it really, really has. And I hope you've enjoyed actually sharing it as well and reflecting and reliving it.
Yeah, I have. I mean, I suppose it's easy to talk about things that you've done and that you know about. So, I've enjoyed it, and I hope everybody else has. We had some good comments from people. People have contacted me that I haven't spoken to for a long time. So we enjoyed it, and seeing you. So yeah, it's good, and it's there, I suppose, for posterity now. So we can't get away from this now, can we? So anyway.
No, we can't. We can't. Well, you've probably said it just then, but have you got any final bit you want to say? Has another story come into your head? Is there anything you want to finish off with?
Well, one day I had to go to a house to take a statement off a woman when I was a policeman, and there was a big "beware of the dog" sign on the gate. And they've got a dog because there's like footballs and bloody chewed bones and holes in the garden where it's been digging. And you've got to look on the front door of the house or or the wall as to how high the paw marks are on the wall when he's been jumping up. And then you know how big the dog is. So when you're a policeman, you look for all these signs. So I look, and it's about 50 yards to the front bloody door. Shit, where's this damn dog? Anyway, walking along, and the dog always waits until you're just a bit nearer than the house, than the gate, so you can't leg it to get away. So this bloody great dog comes out. He starts worrying at me bloody uniform trouser leg, and it's like, rah, 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 rah. And this woman shuts the upstairs window open, and she shouts, "Kick his balls!" So I kick this dog between the legs, and she says, "No, he's football, you pilly." So
I'm glad that I'm glad that out of such a tense and stressful job which you had, you managed to always find the light side of it.
We used to have some laughs in the police. God almighty, yeah. I should actually write a book about all my police stories, because I would make a fortune. The funny stories of your police, they're just legion. But yeah, I just thought I'd leave you on that one, because you've had a donkey, you've had a rabbit, and now you've had a dog.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for you to add to your collection of stories, whatever they may be, in this world of autographs. I know you've taken back on a serious side of it because you are on the NASA Ford, and I wish you well with that. I didn't want to talk about all that sort of stuff because, as we've learned, there is so much to your racing life, which I'm really, really pleased you shared. It's been fantastic. And what a story to end on. I can't think of it. It wasn't something I thought of that would happen. This has been Chris Allanson. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait to catch up at Scunny and wherever we go. I'm sure you're going to continue to enjoy autograss racing to the full, and I can't wait to see how you get on with it further with this car as well. Yeah, Class 3, look out, and next year return to 10, or you'll have probably changed your mind 20 times by then. Who knows? Diesel, class 10 diesel again. Anyway, that's it. Another GrassChat completed, 2-parter. Wonderful. Chris Allanson, again, it's been a pleasure. I'm Russ from GrassChat. You're going to enjoy this, even though we've said it at the end. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.